Welcome to the peer reviewing tutorial. In this tutorial, we'll go over how to peer review in the classroom. This is especially important as you enter high school because you'll be peer reviewing papers in your English classes, your history classes, even your math and science classes. Basically anywhere where you'll be writing a paper. What exactly is peer reviewing? According to the Merriam-Webster Dictionary, peer reviewing is a process by which something proposed as for research or publication is evaluated by a group of experts in the appropriate field. But we aren't exactly experts in our field. How are we supposed to be peer reviewing papers, especially in an English class or a history class? Well, peer reviewing looks pretty similar to this, even in a high school classroom. It involves marking up the papers and adding advice on things like formatting or content. By the end of this tutorial, you'll be a great peer reviewer, ready to peer review papers in any classroom. You'll have the proper tools in order to peer review in the digital age, especially if you're peer reviewing on Google Docs. You'll know how to communicate your edits using specifically designed symbols and tools that can help you communicate with the person that you're peer reviewing for. And you'll be able to give constructive criticism. And it's important to remember that it can be scary, especially if this is your first time peer reviewing. So remember to take a deep breath, know that you are here to work together, and very importantly, make sure you start a conversation with the person that you're peer reviewing beforehand. So let's go over those again. Take a deep breath, know that you are here to work together, and start a conversation beforehand. Let's get into the tools that you can use in the Google Suite in order to peer review. This is Google Docs, and it's one of the easiest ways to peer review online. Already, you can see that there are some issues going on here. These red squiggly lines, these blue squiggly lines, that's Google Docs telling us that there's already some issues. This actually is coming from the Wikipedia swimming webpage. It's the first two paragraphs. We're using that as a sample today. So imagine you're in a classroom and a teacher has asked you to peer review another student's paper, or maybe even your friend has sent you this to review before turning it in. They've already shared the link with you, or the teacher has shared the link with you by typing in your email up here or sending you a link like this, where you can edit who exactly is allowed to see the link. So you have this in front of you, and you already noticed these issues, and you want to make the changes, but you don't want to completely change their paper. You just want to give them a suggestions. That's where this helpful tool in the corner comes in. Right now, we can switch it to editing mode, which means that we're just completely changing it. I can write the word swimming, and that would just completely change the document. But that's not what peer reviewing is. You're not writing it for them, you're just suggesting helpful hints that you think would be useful. So that's where suggesting mode comes into. In suggesting mode, you can add things like this. Say, that S, definitely wrong. Instead of actually taking it out, a comment is added on the right hand of the screen that says delete S, which we just did. Let's take a couple extra seconds to add some more edits. A tab, oh, that's the wrong there. This, limbs of the body. I don't think these are supposed to be capitalized. Don't think that is supposed to be capitalized. And let's add a space right here. That is looking a lot better already. Then, the student who you're peer reviewing the paper for can go back into edit mode and check these off. Yep, I should have indented that first line. Check it off. Becomes permanent. Same goes for all of these. They can all be checked off or ignored. These all look like good suggestions, so we'll keep all of them. There we go. And done. That's already looking a lot better. Keep in mind, you can also add comments by clicking this little comment feature. If you wanted to say something like, add more details. Oops, spelled that wrong. Details. You can comment that as well, and these can also be checked, resolved, or hidden away. So that's Google Docs. It's a super useful tool in order to peer review in the classroom. Now that we know how to peer review, what it is, and how to use Google Docs to peer review, Let's ask some questions. Which tools were useful in Google Docs and which didn't seem as useful in the peer reviewing? If you could create your own peer reviewing software, what would it be able to do and how would you be able to communicate with the person that you're reviewing for? You can pause the video here and answer on a separate sheet of paper. If I were creating my own peer reviewing software, I would make the comments closer to the words that are being changed instead of being all on the right-hand side, kind of in a big mess. I think that would be more useful and more clear in my communication. But wait, what if I'm not peer reviewing online? In all likelihood, most of the time you're going to be peer reviewing on pencil and paper. That means you're going to need to use certain marks to communicate with the person that you're peer reviewing what changes and advice you can give. On the left-hand side, you see some commonly used editing marks used by editors to communicate with the people they are peer reviewing. You have insert word, letter, or phrase to insert a word, letter, or phrase, this squiggly do to delete a certain section of text or a word or punctuation mark, this to capitalize a certain letter, this to change a capitalized letter to a lowercase letter, this to insert a period, these carets to insert commas, apostrophes, quotation marks, and spaces, these two parentheses to close up a space, this squiggle to transpose letters or words, this backwards P to create a new paragraph, or even add an indent, this SP to check spelling, and these two brackets to move right or left. In all likelihood, you will probably not be using all of these all of the time. There are some that will certainly pop up more while you're peer reviewing someone's paper. Here we see a paragraph created about swimming with some minor editing mistakes. On the top here, you see the most commonly used terms in the editing world. This caret, the squiggly do, start of a new paragraph, and check spelling. So I'm going to use the draw tool in PowerPoint to symbolize me kind of using a pencil on paper. First off, we notice right away that you need to start a new paragraph. What's nice about using a pencil and paper is that you can add in your marks right beside where you want it to be added. So this would add a little indent right there. Right away, we also see these little red squigglies under the word summer and notice that it's misspelled. There's not much space here, but you can write right over that, add your circle, and your S, and your P, and let that person know that this word might be spelled incorrectly. As I'm reading it over, I also realize that this sentence right here kind of seems out of place in a sentence about why swimming is my favorite sport. In order to advise the person that you're peer reviewing that you might want to take it out, you can circle all of the words and use this tool or this symbol to indicate that it might be a sentence or a phrase or even a punctuation mark that they don't need in their paper. Finally, I noticed that this might be a bit of a run-on sentence. So I can use the caret tool to add a period here. That's a period, a very messy period. Or we can use the circle that we talked about on the previous slide to add a period and break up these two sentences as well. Like with the Google Docs, let's do some peer reviewing of the peer reviewing symbols themselves. Let's create some of our own. Here's the sentence again, but I think there are some better ways to add some of the comments that we added. What do you guys think? Take some time to think of some of your own symbols that you can use if you've previously communicated with the person that you're peer reviewing for already. Some tools that I personally like to use when I'm peer reviewing are, instead of just writing the SP, if I know how to spell the word, I'll just X out the wrong letter and add in the right one. It saves my person that I'm peer reviewing for just a little bit of time. Sometimes I also, instead of doing all of that work with the squiggly do, taking out a sentence that I don't think is necessary, I'll just add a big line through it to indicate that it's something that isn't necessary, and it's useful because they can still read what's underneath. Finally, let's go over some specific tips in order to be able to constructively give good feedback consistently to everyone that you're peer reviewing. Be as specific as possible. If you see an issue or something that you don't think should be in the text, point it out in simple words. For instance, if you think it needs more details, write more details. Or if something specifically needs reworking, a specific sentence, point to that specific sentence instead of the entire paragraph. Observe, don't interpret. Make sure you're looking closely at what they're actually doing instead of interpreting and putting your own opinions onto the text. This is especially hard if you've written your own text based on a similar prompt in the class. Finally, balance the positives and the negatives. It's really easy to look at all of the things that they might need advice on, but make sure if you see that they've done something particularly well to point that out. Peer reviewing can be fun and useful. Just remember to take a breath and remember that you're here to help each other. Use useful things like Google Docs to comment online efficiently and make sure that you're in suggesting mode. Use and establish a form of symbols so that you can effectively communicate with the person that you're peer reviewing. And finally, make sure that you understand how to give constructive feedback, balancing the positives and negatives, and also making sure that you're observing, not interpreting. Happy reviewing!